first exercise is the bench with the barbell row. Okay, stop making me laugh. The setup is you start with the barbell on the floor or in a rack. Your feet should be about hip distance apart, pointing straight forward. Your knees should have a slight bend in them and your torso should be forward. And then you have to keep your head up and the barbell should be hanging directly in front of you. You have to bend over at the waist. And then the concentric phase with the barbell hanging in front of you, your torso stationary. Exhale and pull the barbell toward your chest, keeping your elbows close to your body. Once at the top, hold for a second and lower the bar. So once the barbell is brought up toward your body, inhale and slowly lower the barbell back to the starting position. The joints that are changing angles are the elbow and the shoulder joint. So they will be going through elbow and shoulder joint flexion and extension. The primary muscle movers are the latissimus dorsi and trapezius. And on the concentric, you are exhaling, and the eccentric, you are inhaling. Next exercise Brennan will be doing is a one-armed row with a dumbbell. So to set up, you choose a flat bench and place a dumbbell on the side. You place your right or left leg on top of the bench and bend your torso forward from the waist until your upper body is parallel to the floor. And you place your right hand or your left hand on the bench for support. Use the left hand to pick up the dumbbell, or your right hand in this case, and hold the weight while keeping your lower back straight. The palm of your hand should be facing your torso, and this will be the starting position. On the concentric phase, pull the dumbbell up to your chest, keeping your arm close to your side and keeping your torso stationary. Breathe out as you perform this step. Also make sure that the force is performed with the back muscles and not the arms. Finally, the upper torso should remain stationary and only the arms should move for this. On the eccentric phase, you're lowering the weight straight down to the starting position. Breathe in as you perform this step. Repeat the movement as many times as you need and switch sides. The joints changing angles would be elbow and shoulder joints, and the actions occurring would be elbow joint flexion and extension and shoulder joint flexion and extension. The primary muscle movers are the latissimus dorsi and the trapezius. So the next exercise is a pull-up. So you want to grip the bar about shoulder width apart or just outside of shoulder width with your hands in a pronated grip. So then you want to hang from the bar. You can cross your legs if you want. So for the concentric phase, you just pull yourself up until your chin passes the bar, and make sure to keep your elbows straight. And you want to exhale on this phase. On the eccentric phase, you want to inhale and lower yourself from the bar. And then the joints changing angles are shoulder joint and elbow joint, and they're going through shoulder and elbow joint flexion and extension. The primary muscle movers for this exercise are the latissimus dorsi and the teres major. The chin up. So you want to grab the bar with a supinated grip. Your grip should be about a foot apart, slightly short, like smaller than a pull-up grip. You want to lift your feet off the ground so you're hanging by bending your knees and crossing your feet. On the concentric phase, you want to exhale and raise your body up until your chin is above the bar. And the eccentric phase, you want to lift your body. Once you've lifted your body, lower yourself down slowly and inhale. The joints changing angles in this exercise are the shoulder joint and the elbow joint. They will be both going through elbow and shoulder joint flexion and extension. The primary muscle movers are the latissimus dorsi and the biceps brachii. The next exercise is a barbell bench press. You want to start by laying down on your back on the bench and the barbell in a rack, and the bar should be directly above your eyes. Your feet should be flat in front on the ground, and you want to reach up and grab the barbell with a pronated grip that is just wider than shoulder width. And once you grab the bar, you want to hold it above your chest with your arms fully extended. On the eccentric phase, you want to inhale and lower the bar straight down in a controlled motion. Make sure your elbows are tucked in and close to your body when lowering the bar towards your nipple line. Once you've lowered the bar, pause for a second, and that's when you go into the concentric phase. We'll exhale and press the bar back up towards the ceiling so you're back at the starting position. The joints changing angles are the elbow and the shoulder joint. Your elbow joint is going through flexion and your shoulder joint is going through horizontal adduction. Primary muscle movers are your triceps and your pectoralis major. The next exercise is chest flies. So you want to lay down on the bench with the back, so your back of your head, your upper back and your shoulders and your butt should be in contact with the bench, and there should be a space between the bench and your lumbar vertebrae, and your feet should be flat in front on the floor. Hold the dumbbell in each hand, and your arms should be lifted straight up towards the ceiling with your elbows slightly bent, and your palms should be facing towards each other. On the eccentric phase, you want to lower your arms at both sides in a wide arc until you feel stretch on your chest. You should be making a T with your upper body. Breathe in as you perform this portion of the movement. On the concentric phase, return your arms back to the starting position as you squeeze your chest muscles and breathe out. Hold for a second at the contracted position. The joints changing angles should be your shoulder joint, and your shoulder joint will be going through shoulder joint flexion. The primary muscle mover is the pectoralis major. The next exercise Brennan will be doing is a glute ham raise. So this exercise to begin with the outward or eccentric phase of the lift. At this point, Brennan should be inhaling. The goal is to push outward to the point that the hamstring is fully eccentrically contracted. As Brennan pulls his weight back in the concentric phase of the lift, he should be exhaling. The primary muscle mover of this exercise is the hamstrings. The only joint that should be changing angle is the knee joint. During the eccentric phase of the joint goes into extension, and during the concentric phase of the lift, these joints go back to flexion. For the setup, so the foot should be on the platform, so your feet are pushed against it, and knees are touching the pads. Arms crossed across your chest, spine should be in alignment, so his coccyx, thoracic vertebrae, and the back of his skull are all in alignment. What to watch for that the lifter is hinging only at the knee joint, eyes are facing forward, and the spine stays.
So for this exercise, we are doing a barbell back squat. Emily is doing a barbell back squat. This exercise is to begin with the downward or eccentric phase of the lift. At this point, Emily would be inhaling. The goal is to lower to the point that the femur is parallel with the floor, provided her back posture does not change. As Emily pushes the weight up in the concentric phase of the lift, she should be exhaling. The primary muscle mover of this exercise is gluteus maximus. The first joint that should be changing angle is the hip joint, followed by the knee joint. During the lowering / eccentric phase, the joints go into flexion, and during the upward / concentric phase, lift these joints go back to extension. Unrack the bar with hands gripped slightly wider than shoulder width apart, with the bar resting on the trapezius muscles. Keep eyes looking forward and never look down. You'll place your feet slightly wider than shoulder width apart. Feet should be either parallel or slightly out-toed. The spine should be in alignment, so her coccyx, thoracic vertebrae, and the back of her skull are all in alignment together. Key things to watch for in this lift are that the lifter is hinging at their hips first as opposed to their knees. Eyes are facing forward and never looking down. Make sure that their knees are not going past their toes, and that their spine is always in proper alignment, and that the lifter is never going too far down, butt winking. Okay, so the next exercise we are doing is a barbell front squat. This exercise begins with the downward or eccentric phase of the lift. At this point, Emily should be inhaling. The goal is to lower to the point that the femur is parallel with the floor, just like the barbell back squat. And her back posture again should not be changing. As Emily pushes the weight up in the concentric phase of the lift, she should be exhaling. The primary muscle mover for this exercise is as well the gluteus maximus. The first joint that should be changing angle is the hip joint, followed by the knee joint. During the lowering / eccentric phase of these joints, these joints go into flexion, and during the upward / concentric phase of the lift, these joints go back to extension. Unrack the bar with hands in a clean style grip, with hands slightly wider than shoulder width, or a cross-arm style grip can also be used with the hands on top of the bar at about shoulders width, with the bar resting below the clavicles across the pectoralis major muscles. Keep eyes looking forward and never down. Place feet slightly wider than shoulder width apart. Feet should be either parallel or slightly out-toed. Spine should be in alignment so her coccyx, thoracic vertebrae, and back of skull are all in alignment. Key things to watch for are that the elbows are pointing nice and high, keeping the bar in the proper position on your chest. The lifter should be hinging at their hips primarily, as opposed to their knees, which would be following secondary. Eyes should always be looking forward and never down. Knees do not go past toes, and spine stays in proper alignment at all time, and avoid going too low to erase the possibility of butt wink. Okay, so the next exercise we're doing is a barbell box squat. This exercise again would begin with the downward or eccentric phase of the lift. At this point is the time when Emily should be inhaling, and afterwards on the concentric phase is when she should be exhaling. The goal is to lower all the way down to the box and sit down for a second and then begin the lift. The point of doing the box squat is to get the client to actually sit back more and activate their glutes a little bit better, keeping the weight on the balls of their feet, and it'll also prevent forward leaning. So when she is doing the lift, the first joint that you'll be changing angle is again the hip joint, followed by the knee joint. The primary muscle mover of this exercise is the gluteus maximus, and during the lowering or the eccentric phase, the joints would be going into flexion, and during the upward or concentric phase, the hip and knee joint would be going back to extension. You would unrack the bar across the trapezius muscles with your hands slightly wider than shoulder width apart, and you would then begin to stand just a few inches away from the box, so you actually have to sit back into it. You would place your feet slightly wider than shoulder width apart, and your feet should be either parallel or slightly out-toed. The spine should always be in proper alignment so her coccyx, thoracic vertebrae, and the back of her skull are all in alignment. Key things to watch for in the lift are that the client is keeping proper alignment in their spine, and they are hinging primarily at their hip joint, followed by their knee joint. This exercise should encourage them to not put their knees past their toes, as they do have to sit back into the... Okay, so the next exercise we're doing is the split squat. This exercise is to begin with the downward or eccentric phase of the lift. At this point, Emily should be inhaling. The goal is to lower to the point that the femur is parallel with the floor. As Emily pushes up in the concentric phase of the lift, she should be exhaling. The primary muscle mover of this exercise is the gluteus maximus. The first joint that should be changing angle is the hip joint, followed by the knee joint. During the lowering / eccentric phase of these joints go into flexion, and during the upward concentric phase of the lift, these joints go back to extension. To begin the workout, you would take a large step straight forward and make sure you strike with the heel first. Keep your eyes looking forward and never down. Head should stay above your hips, keeping your spine in proper alignment. Spine should be in alignment so her coccyx, thoracic vertebrae, and the back of her skull are all in alignment. Key things to watch for is that the lifter is hinging at their hip instead of their knee. Eyes are always facing forward. Her knee is not going past her toes, and that her spine is in proper alignment and she's not leaning forward at all. Okay, so the next exercise we will be performing is the conventional deadlift. This exercise is to begin with the upward or concentric phase of the lift. At this point, Emily should be exhaling. The goal is to concentrically lift the weight up to the standing position, keeping the bar close to your legs so your core can keep your spine in the proper position, as well as to maximize your power output. As Emily pulls the weight up in the concentric phase of the lift, she should always be exhaling. During the eccentric phase, she should be inhaling and maintaining her posture to prevent injury. The primary muscle movement of this exercise is the gluteus maximus. The first joint that should be changing angle is the hip joint, followed by the knee joint. During the lowering / eccentric phase, the joints go into flexion, and during the upward concentric phase, the lifts go back to, this lift brings these joints back to extension. She should grip the bar with her hands slightly wider than shoulder width apart. Using either a pronated grip or an alternate grip is also an option, with one hand pronated and the other hand supinated. Keep eyes looking forward and never down. Place feet slightly wider than shoulder width apart. Feet should be either parallel or slightly out-toed. Spine should always be in proper alignment, so her coccyx, thoracic vertebrae, and back of the skull are all in alignment together. Key things to watch for is that the lifter begins the lift with their butt low to allow their legs to do most of the work as opposed to their spine. Eyes are always facing forward, and their knees should never be going over the bar to the point where they're actually preventing the lifter from lifting the weight up vertically, forcing them to lean forward, and the forward lean would not allow them to keep their spine in proper alignment. The next exercise Emily will be performing is the Romanian deadlift. This exercise is to begin the downward or eccentric phase of the lift. At this point, Emily should be inhaling. The goal is to lower the point that the hamstrings are fully eccentrically contracted. Back posture does not change. As Emily pulls the weight up in the concentric phase of the lift, she should be exhaling. The primary muscle mover of this exercise is the hamstrings. The only joint that should be changing angle in this exercise is the hip joint. During the lowering or eccentric phase of the joint, the joint goes into flexion, and during the upward or concentric phase of the lift, the joint goes back to extension. For the exercise, she would unrack the bar with her hands gripped slightly wider than shoulder width apart in a pronated grip, keeping her eyes looking forward and never down. Place feet slightly wider than shoulder width apart. Feet should be parallel, and her spine should be in alignment so that her coccyx, thoracic vertebrae, and back of the skull are all in alignment with each other. Key things to watch for are that the lifter keeps their knees in a soft position, and the only joint changing angle is the hip joint. Eyes are always facing forward, and the spine is in proper alignment